Welcome back to Hiraeth Gaming vlog number 5. Today we're going to be talking about working with a co-designer.
Yep.
And then one really key issue, I would say, in game design that I think a co-designer can help, and we'll get into that later. So we're going to start off with a couple. We're going to do kind of strengths, and then downsides, and then considerations.
Yeah.
And then go ahead. So I think it'd be cool to just give them a quick update on where we are with our game design.
Oh yeah. So right now like we talked about last week or last video, we are implementing that time system into the rest of our game. Today's felt great. It's like the first time in a few months that I felt like this is really working. Everything seems very cohesive. There's not these jarring segues into different phases. So it's not, before we had 3 games in different phases that were put into one. Now we have one game that has different aspects of it.
Yeah.
Which is a really big difference from what we had.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Strengths.
You have a lot of when you're designing a game, you go through so many different ideas, and a lot of them aren't great. They're not, but it's hard to get through those.
Or some of them sound great, and they aren't.
Right. So it's helpful to have a co-designer, somebody you can bounce ideas off of, somebody who can go through and say, this part of that idea is great, this part isn't, let's try and focus on the better part, or even, they're going in and they're shaping stuff. Just having that separate set of eyes is huge for having any kind of design. Like we got with the advice from the Proto Atlanta. It's the same kind of thing to kind of a lesser extent, I guess. Yeah. Maybe not even. It's more constant, right? Because you have somebody else critiquing you and stuff like that.
Yeah. So. I think, to speak a little bit from my own experience, I've really been making games legitimately since college, where I started trying to make some of my own board games, and I was iterating things, trying to make new versions of Descent, or there'd be phone games that I'd play or video games that I'd play, and I'd want to try to recreate that experience. And I always really just struggled to kind of keep up that motivation, to keep up. And it wasn't until, 2017, I think. Yeah, December of...
end of 17.
No, December of 2018. Yeah, into 2017, yes.
Yeah.
Mike was like, hey, we should make a game. And the difference, granted, I do think this is a better idea than what I had done in the past, the 10 or 15 that I'd made in the past. I would always I'd bring it out to playtest, and it would just fall flat, or I would get, just kind of, it was fun, but then I wouldn't have any motivation to really push into it.
Yeah.
But I think, to the next point, kind of, when I don't have motivation, Mike does, or when he doesn't,
vice versa.
I do, or when we both don't, there's still that pressure of, I can't just drop this.
Right, there's expectation. For sure.
It would be a huge thing if I came to Mike, or he came to me and was like, hey, I want out. It'd be like, okay,
but it would be
it
would probably be the end of it, because I don't think I would do this game. Like, we have a big game, right? So it is different in
big.
Compared to other games, but just having that motivation, having that other guy there being like, all right, like let's do this, let's make this game, is a lot more motivating than I am. I mean, it just depends on the person, but sure. I'm definitely more motivated having a co-designer for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I think we both have different strengths.
Oh yeah. I think we've talked about this before, but Kyle's a lot more the creator, kind of the creative, I guess is probably a better way to describe that. And I go through and I'm a little bit more analytical. We come from different gaming backgrounds, so we both focus on different things. At the start, we kind of did, he was doing story and exploration, and I was doing combat, but they've kind of melded since we've been working on this for so long. But it definitely helps to have that kind of segregation of ideas and different strengths for what you work on.
Yeah, and there's definitely a Venn diagram where we have some overlap, where we both do kind of a lot of the same stuff. But if you look at my background, it's a lot of like Skyrim and Dragon Age and just very story heavy games. I've always been about that. I've always loved fantasy books and reading and that. and Mike's background is much more Magic the
PvP.
Gathering.
Yeah.
Yeah, PvP, Overwatch, and
Playing against other people.
yeah, and that's not my style. I would
Yeah.
almost always prefer a co-op game.
I was gonna say I think that's very true for the games we play. Like I normally I've started to play more co-op games, but before I played probably Pandemic. I think was probably the first one I really played. Before that, I mean, it's always competitive. I always play against my wife. Like we're both very competitive, so we don't really play many co-op games before recently.
So anyway, I think those strengths definitely help, and part of that too is may seem like a strange thing, but I'm definitely an extrovert. Mike is mostly an extrovert, and I think that helps us a ton. And those are different strengths, but if I can't just. It is difficult for me to just sit there and work on a game by myself and iterate and go. But when we come over, like we can do a 8-hour or a 10-hour day.
I will say
it's so much easier.
Oh yeah, we'll have a Saturday where we just work on the game, and it's it's over 2 times. It's 3-4 times more productive than we would do on our own.
Yeah.
Because I mean it's fun. You're sitting there, thinking up new ideas, trying stuff out, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. And it's fun rather than just work.
Yeah, so some of that may be...
It can be work sometimes.
Sure, knowing yourself to know, am I more introverted where that would be potentially draining to me? But for me as an extrovert, it is just breathe new life into this whole hobby for me. And I've fell in love with it all over again.
Yeah, definitely.
Small one here, but different friend groups. Mike is from Atlanta. Yeah. I'm not. But I do have friend groups that are either, down in Columbus where I'm from, or Berry College up in Rome, and so we have different friend groups. We met each other when we were 25, 26.
Yeah.
And so that just opens up new opportunities for play testing, just to get different eyes on the game, and just different opportunities of people to say, hey, oh, this guy who's an artist, or this connection here, and
or come play my game. Like we need people to play this.
Sure.
So yeah, it definitely helps having just more people to look on your game and stuff like that. There are some stuff to consider for sure when working with another person. I mean, in anything, when you're working on a project with somebody else, you're gonna have a conflict of ideas, and you have your own opinion on certain things. Yeah. And you really gotta be humble and really trusting in the person that they're trying to make the same game great. You're both trying to do the same thing. So you really need to make sure you're considerate of the person, but also being able to get your point across without coming across like you're bringing them down or whatnot.
Sure.
Because there's some times where you're gonna feel very passionate about something and they may think it's bad.
Sure. Well, today, for example, we had a thing where we just sort of disagreed on kind of the feel of a mechanic, and we from the very beginning sort of established that if we really can't see eye to eye, we're going to go with my decision, which is, thanks Mike for being that humble. But I agree, like he said, humility. I think like you some of it's thick skin, but more than that, there's a level of, you've got to have a certain vision with the other person and share that vision to say, hey, like we want to get this game made. We want to get it made well. I trust you enough, and you got to believe in them. You got to believe in their work, for whatever reason. But I think it's been helpful for the two of us because we trust. There's a reason behind why you have that idea, and so maybe it's exploring like, hey, help me understand what do you want out of this. Help me understand what feeling are you trying to evoke, and then we still might disagree, and then you just have to kind of move forward and maybe try them both out and see which one is better. But
yeah, I definitely think. I mean, trying them out's good. It depends on how much time and how big of a change it is.
Sure.
But it is definitely good having one person be like, look, I'm going to be the final say. Can you deal with that, essentially?
Yeah.
And that's because then you don't ever get to that point where you can't get to a decision.
Gridlock,
yeah. And that's not good for anything.
Yeah.
And so it's just good having, and again with us, it was better for him to be because he is the creative of it, essentially, with the theme and trying to get the ideas behind it. So I'm gonna defer to his decisions if that's if we get to a point where we can't figure it out. And it hasn't been. It's not even something we really think about anymore. I guess
it's not been a huge deal.
Yeah. Ever. We've never really come to a point where we're like, we're not gonna work.
Yeah.
So, but
two things real quick that we didn't mention really for strengths. Less work. which
Oh,
then
for
definitely moves into the downsides, which is half the pay as well. So,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know if I would say it's half as much work, because, you know, I don't think sometimes it's extra. It's like sometimes I'm able to do more.
We could work through two ideas.
Sure.
Like we were saying, if we can't get to a decision where we want to go one way or the other, we'll say, okay, well, let's flesh both these out. Let's try them out, see which one we like better.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, you know, just the design process.
Part of that too is like there's things that I'm able to give to him and say, hey, like I don't want to do this. Are you cool with doing it? And oftentimes, like we do have those different strengths, and like I do a lot more of the graphic design stuff. He does a lot more of the kind of iterative. For example, in our game we have settlement events, and so he's kind of building those out, which is a little more mechanically driven. And then we can work on the narrative if there's any things that we disagree on or need to touch up.
Right.
So that again, maybe that's another strength.
Yeah. For sure.
And then another kind of, I don't know how we're doing on time, but there is definitely a less of a chance, I believe, of chasing down something really awful.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is like when you get into this game, when you get into, you know, after a year of development or more, it is so easy to be this close to it where you don't know what's wrong with it, or you just can't see. You know, we've seen people's designs where we're just like, man, like
the core is the problem, not the rest of the game.
right. It doesn't need more polish. You need to do something else. And I think there's been a fear in me, definitely, of like trying to go to friends and family and just be like, hey, like please give us feedback. Like if this is awful, if you don't believe in this at all, we need to know that right now because we're spending so much time on this. Like you know, it's the whole killing your darlings kind of thing. But I do think that the chance of that is dramatically reduced when there's somebody else who's there with you, because we can both, you know, hopefully we're not an echo chamber, but
which, I mean, sometimes we'll just miss ideas, like the time mechanic, and that's, you know, it takes that outside view to see that, but you know, you're not going to get stuck on something a lot smaller or something like that. Those things come up a lot more than just one time. Having that other person to talk to and kind of say, you know, is this something that we can actually feasibly do, and is it fun, is it good? And then be like, no, it's not.
And we've gotten some feedback of that type, and we could be like, okay, what's wrong with it? What do, you know, how do we need to change?
And again, that's the correcting kind of. Sure. You have part of a good idea. Let's bring it in and flesh out the good part of it.
Sure. And I don't know how much I'm going to be able to dive into this idea. This may take its own video sometime, but the biggest deterrent for me to ever push any of my games past where they were, because again, I mentioned I got probably 10 or 15 like really bad games that I've play tested a couple times, and I would get stuck. Like I would get stuck to where I'd be like, I don't know where the fun is, or you know, there's this mechanic that just really I'm struggling to get through. And I really believe that as a creative of any type, really, but especially related to board games are, in my opinion, probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. You know, I've got my master's. You know, I lived in India for 6 months, but this, to me, like intellectually, board games are the most difficult thing I've ever done. And the biggest piece of that is that getting stuck, where you get to an idea and it just feels like, I have no idea how we're going to push this
where to go from here.
But that's been the biggest thing for me as having a co-designer is you just have to push through. And you do every time we push through it. Like every time we hit this wall, we're like, oh, what the heck are we going to do with that thing? And then we try and eventually we break through it, and it's so gratifying. I think like it's such a satisfying thing to be able to sometimes it's frustrating where it's like we're never gonna get, you know, we can't. Our very recent one, I'll share a quick example. We've had a hard time with our structure of our game of knowing how do you win or lose. Like, can we just give a board game where they just like meander around and like
just play our game? It's fun.
Like we promise. But you have to have some structure as a board game. And you have to know when you win, you have to know when you lose. Right. There has to be a reason to do what you're doing. Sure. And we had this mission system which really felt like we were rewarding players for playing the game, which just didn't feel very good.
There's no loss. You just win.
Yeah. Like, and so anyway, we've you know, it took me driving down the road in my car, listening to classical music. Thanks, probably Rob Davio and a couple others who recommend that. Matt Leacock maybe, and just like thinking through like, okay, just, you know, this was like a 2-hour drive, just chugging along at this problem, like keep bringing my mind back to it, and eventually we came up with this new system we're going to try out, and we like it so far. That's a progress system. We'll probably go into that another time. But anyway, I want to encourage you as a designer, you as a creator, you will hit walls. We've hit probably,
many walls.
I don't know, yeah, maybe a dozen big walls where we're like, this could end our game.
And that one took, we've been working on that since we started the game. I mean, probably 6 or 7 months after we started, we realized we needed that, and then it's been, since then we've been trying different things, and they just haven't felt like good enough.
Yeah, and finally, I think we're to the point where we're starting to feel like this is the right direction we want to go in. So I just want to encourage you, like, push and push and push, and if you have a co-designer, like, push with them, because it just, you have that extra motivation.
Yeah, for sure.
So you want to finish up with maybe some considerations?
Yeah, I think we went through a lot of these. You're gonna have to have a lot of trust with the other person to know that they're gonna try and do the same. They're trying to make this great game.
Yeah.
And then you gotta be able to give and receive feedback. You gotta criticism it's tough to deal with. Just as a person, that person doesn't like what I did,
Sure.
and that's kind of tough. But if you know that they're trying to do it to improve the game, improve that stuff, that's just going to be you have to be able to accept that and give criticism as well in a constructive way.
Sure.
For sure. But yeah.
I think one thing, if I can just, this is general. We use Discord all the time. We're on it basically every single day talking about our game. And I will say there are times where I'm fairly sensitive. I'm definitely an emotional guy, which is really helpful, I think, in some ways. But when it comes to certain conversations, I think it's super helpful that we have those conversations in person.
Yeah, things get lost over text, and you don't get the like how they're saying it or the inflection or anything.
Exactly.
So just be careful with.
They just be like, why? And you're like,
yeah.
What do you mean why?
Yeah, you got to be careful with how you communicate.
Sure.
For sure. Because again, you're dealing with another person. They're not in your head. They're not they're not you. So they're gonna think different. They're gonna have their own opinions. They're gonna they're not gonna be able, if they read something over text, they're gonna take it differently than you meant for it. So just.
But be willing to have those conversations. I mean, willing to be humble and be vulnerable enough to say, hey, like, gosh, like, can we talk about this? Can we dive into this? I don't really like this idea. Or, hey, like, the way you said that to me was like that. Like, can we figure out a way that is more productive than
then you're wrong.
Yeah, no, exactly. Seriously.
For sure.
So, and then the last thing, I mean, related to that certainly is you're going to be bringing that in front of playtesters anyway, in front of other designers. Mm-hmm. And so a co-designer helps you, I think, to practice that thick skin a little bit.
Yeah.
When Mike tells me an idea is wrong, then it's no different. Or, I've already kind of been exposed to that. If another designer or another friend or a playtester says, hey, I don't like this part.
Yeah. Because, again, the criticisms of your game are way more helpful than the praises of your game.
No.
I mean, every single time we're looking for, what doesn't work so we can fix it, not what is working so we can do more of it. Because there's not really a place for that, right? There's more, let's make the whole complete game fun, and you can't do that if you don't know what's not working and what's broken. And they're gonna, if they're good play testers, they're gonna tell you, what you need to change and what isn't working. So.
Yeah. So anyway, to kind of close out, I think if you can find anybody with a shared vision for a game that you want to bring about, do it. Working with a co-designer is such a rich experience because creating is such an amazing thing. Then having somebody along with you as you're doing that is just, it's invigorating and it's awesome to get people's unique perspectives. And I don't think the game A would ever have been made, but B would be nearly the game it would be if either of us were doing it on our own.
I don't think I ever, this is the first game I've ever made. So he's had years of doing this and stuff like that, but I haven't ever made a game before, and I wouldn't have. I don't think I would have ever gotten into game design. And now it's like, I love it. It's great. I've considered going in it for career. I mean, I'm a software developer, so I've considered what if I made games? There's a lot of joy and it's good. It's good times. It's fun.
So next time.
Till next time, guys. Thank y'all. Like, comment, subscribe.
Absolutely. Y'all have a good one.